is here. Thank you so much for joining. We will have Sean from TimeChi tonight and Leon from Wood Toys. Just let me check. The wood, the wooden toy company. Is that correct, Leon? You have to answer. Thanks for that. And that's pretty much it. The format of this talk tonight will be a fireside chat. So I'm going to be talking with Sean for 20-ish minutes. Feel free to send some questions through the chat, and then after that, we have 10 minutes for a Q&A. And after that, Hans is going to have his fireside chat with Leon. And that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for joining. I'll just ask Sean and Leon to introduce themselves and we can get started. Maybe Sean first.
Yep, sure thing. Hopefully the audio is working all right. CEO and co-founder of TimeChi. So TimeChi, if you are part of the OzHard or any of the communities, you might have seen some of our ads. It is this lovely smart timer that we call a Fitbit for productivity. So it gets you into an idea called time boxing. So what we suggest is starting with the Pomodoro method, where you do 25 minutes of focused work and 5 minutes of break. But in the background, what we do is when you press the button, it actually connects via Wi-Fi to an app on your phone and computer and shuts down all of your digital distractions. It also acts as a traffic light, so people around you know when you're actually working and when you can be, they can come back to have a chat. But in the background, we actually keep statistics and metrics so that we can see how well you've been focusing, and how many times you've been interrupted, when you started, when you finished, and you can actually figure out how productive you've been and improve on it. So we're actually live on Indiegogo now. So if you have a look at timechi.com, it'll direct you to our website.
All right, thank you so much, Sean. I'm just going to drop a link for your Indiegogo campaign here.
Thanks.
So everyone will be able to check it as soon as they finish here. And Leo, if you want to introduce yourself, thank you so much for being here, man.
No worries. Thanks, Bernardo. So my name's Leon Mortimer. I'm the Managing Director at Event 720. So Event 720 is a custom exhibition stand building company. And more recently, I guess I'm the founder of the Wooden Toy Co., which we will talk a little bit more about shortly.
Nice. Thank you so much for that, man. I'm just going to drop a link for the Wooden Toy Company here as well, so everyone can take a look at your website. Thank you so much, man. And we're just going to start the fireside chat now. So that's me and Sean. Hans and Leon, if you could kindly maybe just turn off your screen, turn off the camera. I think that would make things easier. Thank you so much, guys. And Sean, great to see you again, man. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much
for coming. Yeah. So let's get started. I might just start asking. I mean, TimeChi is awesome. I love it. I've been checking these productivity tools and this kind of stuff for ages now. And you personally have been tagged in my LinkedIn maybe 3 or 4 times already. I'm not sure if you've noticed that, but people keep tagging me so I can check TimeChi as well. How did you come up with the idea for TimeChi? What was in your mind?
So it's kind of a funny story and almost a little bit of a pivot from what we initially started off to do. Mm-hmm. So a while ago, I kind of started a company trying to make smart light switches for smart homes. Mm-hmm. So a little while ago, I realized that when you have bulbs from Lifex or Philips Hue and stuff like that, it's really great to try and control everything using your Amazon Echo. But the thing that you're missing is a simple button just to switch things off and on, because when you use the light switch, you literally turn off the bulb and you can't use it. But when I was starting off on that company, I was working at a WeWork at the time, one of the first ones in Sydney. And I realized that I was spending way too much time kind of socializing, having people tapping me on my shoulder, or like emails coming in, or spending time on Facebook and YouTube, just basically being unproductive. And for the first time, I kind of had to look at things and went, geez, this is my company, this is my money I'm spending, and I got really scared. And I said, I've got to be more productive. So what I did was I used some of the electronics that we had using the Wi-Fi switch, the light switch, and created a small device for myself that had a couple of LEDs on it and got me into something that I used to do during university for study called the Pomodoro method. So this is where you spend 25 minutes of focused work, and then you take a 5-minute break. And at the end of 4 of these cycles, you do a long break. And this kind of helps manage your energy and manages to help you be more productive and get through tasks much faster. But I made this little electronic device, and I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to supercharge this, seeing it's already Wi-Fi connected, by making it actually block me from going to sites like Facebook and Twitter when I'm supposed to be working. And that was how TimeChi was born. Basically, a couple of people saw it sitting on my desk, and they said, hey, what's that? And when I explained what it did and what it does, they were like, hey, can you make me one? And then it was kind of like that big aha moment, and we pivoted the company into TimeChi.
That's an awesome story, man. Thank you so much for sharing. And it's such a huge success, right? You got funded 8 times in less than 48 hours.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah.
Apparently, we're over $200,000 through the Indiegogo campaign and still rising. So, within the first 24 hours, I guess we managed to get 100% funded. Actually, I think it was 8 times funded. We, I think, hit 100% in the first hour of launching, which was absolutely fantastic. And I guess a little bit of happiness, considering that we'd been working on this one for about 2.5 years, coming up to 3 years after a couple of delays and stuff, especially with COVID.
Yeah.
Finally getting it out to market and kind of getting that validation that as an entrepreneur you're always looking for, market validation.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing. And when you talk about market validation in a general sense, you're the main person behind OZ Hard, right?
Yeah.
And what was the role of being a community builder when developing this project?
Yeah, it was one of the biggest problems about starting a hardware startup is just access to spaces, access to like machinery, but even more so is access to the community that you can kind of ask questions to and find out and bounce ideas off. And it was kind of funny when I was starting TimeChi and realized that it was a hardware company. Everybody was like, you know, going with this silly old adage that they feel so proud of themselves when they say, "Oh, hardware is hard, ha 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 ha." And I kind of got really under my skin and really kind of like made me quite angry, and especially because I was meeting a lot of other hardware startups that literally were saying to me, you know, I'm a hardware startup, you're a hardware startup, there aren't many of us. And I was like, you're lying, and I'm going to prove it. So I started a little Facebook group called, at the start it was Sid Hard, and I was going to be the Sydney hardware startups community. But a person down from Melbourne, Adrian Stone, actually said, hey, don't be silly, it should be a whole countrywide thing. So that's how Hard was formed, and it managed to bring the community together, which I think is one of the most important parts about any startup.
That's awesome, man. That's great. And I was actually checking OZ Hard not so long ago, and I've noticed that you've managed to develop features based on feedback that you got from one of your Facebook groups, right? And how was that? I mean, how was the process of gathering this feedback and converting that into meaningful features that could be converted into something that people really wanted and ended up paying for it, you know, and validating that that feature was really valid?
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. So one of the things that we did in the early days is we're very much about, like, you know, we're customer focused. And I guess people who've been in startups for a while kind of talk about the lean methodology, you know, the lean startup, where it's like you build, test, learn, iterate, that sort of side of things. And I kind of wanted to bring that into the hardware space. And that was kind of like finding out a lot of information from our customers. So what we did a long time ago was we started a TimeChi VIPs group, a community that we could bring people into so that they can learn about TimeChi, ask the questions, find out a little bit more about, like, you know, the team and everything behind it, and even ask us some very hard questions. We were not afraid of, like, you know, the hardest questions and being upfront and honest about where we are and what we're doing. And I think the fact is that, like, a lot of people found that very refreshing to hear a company, like, you know, just being honest and truthful about everything. And it meant that we could engage with our customers and start to ask and float questions, like, you know, things that help us as well as help them, because we want to know, hey, what software do you use that we need to integrate with? What sort of things do you do? How do you plan your day? Those sorts of things that become very, very strong for us. But in kind of like doing the process of asking questions, we get to learn about our customers as well. So it helps us develop a much more targeted and better product for everybody who has a TimeChi.
Yeah, that's awesome, and everyone should be doing that for sure. Do you have any stories or any anecdotes around developing a feature for TimeChi based on user feedback? Because this is truly something that amazes me, the fact that the hardware company can be so close to the end user. That's not common at all, right? Because with software, it's much easier to beta test, to growth hack, or even just have a fake landing page, or just put a feature here over there, A/B test. So it's much more. I would say it's much more streamlined. The testing process and this feedback loop with the user is much more streamlined. How was that for you when it comes to doing the same thing but with hardware?
I think with hardware, the thing is that being able to rapidly iterate and prototype is one of the best things that you can do nowadays. It's something that's kind of come up thanks to 3D printing, the ability to use even free software like Fusion 360 to be able to quickly design and iterate on those designs. But one of the biggest features which we did launch was we had it as a stretch goal because we kind of thought it might be quite interesting to have for our customers, and that's what we're calling the TimeChi E. It was a wireless external display that sits on your door and connects to your TimeChi so that it kind of tells people outside your office that, hey, I'm actually busy at the moment, so don't even knock on the door and come in. And when we were talking to our customers, we found out that almost half of our customers, I think it was just over a third of our customers actually, were saying that, hey, this is actually a feature that I really want. And in a lot of cases, some people said that because it was a stretch goal, it was the thing that was stopping them from buying our main product. So we took feedback and started kind of developing the product in the background, coming up with some sketches and concepts and trying to figure out how to do it. And throughout the whole process, we're asking our customers, hey, this is what we're thinking of. What do you think? And they kind of helped us develop the product. And at the moment, we're kind of working in the background of turning this TimeChi into the prototype of the TimeChi E. So this is actually the casing and housing. It's going to have the part on the door itself. So trying to make sure that we can be as efficient as possible. Quite a lot of the parts from this one go into this one, but as you can see, it's a slightly different form factor so that it can stick onto a door.
That's awesome, and thanks for bringing up the props. That's really, really cool. Thanks for that. You've brought up the old adage that hardware is hard, right? And that's my question for you now. Why hardware? So if you're looking forward to have a tool that it's a productivity tool, right? Why do you go the hardware route and not software?
Oh man, I look at going back and going like, gee, software would have been a lot easier to do. I tell you that side of things. But when we were looking deeper into the actual problem, the problem space, we realized that it's something that software just really wasn't the best platform to do it on. If you wanted to create an app on your phone, the worst case scenario is the fact that there's about 1 million different apps to try and help you be productive on your phone. And they rarely work because you have so many apps on your phone that you just lose things in the background. But worse yet is if you are trying to use your phone to try and stop you from being distracted, as soon as you open it up, you see all of your notifications, everything there that is designed to distract you. And it literally puts the drug in front of the addict. It's kind of like, you can't get away from those distractions. But the other side of things that we did a lot of deep research into is the psychology and how habit forming actually occurs. And one of the things that they do say is that the original Pomodoro method kind of created an almost something that you're supposed to do. So it creates this kind of dopamine rush that when you finish a cycle, you have to pick up your TimeChi timer, like your end timer, like at the end of a focus period. And we wanted to kind of like recreate that for the digital world. And for that, we made it a nice device that's always ready to use so that you don't have to dig around. So it's so easy and frictionless to start. But on the other side of things, we have a very satisfying click when it comes to it. And we've designed it like a game show buzzer so that it means you feel like you're winning when you're trying to be productive, which means you're more likely to use it. And the best productivity methods are the ones you actually use. An app on your phone is rarely used. I can tell you about an app that I tried before called Forest, and I have many dead trees on my phone.
I've tried Forest as well, and it didn't work out at all. I'm glad you took the hardware route, man. That's awesome. So you've launched during a pandemic, right? So why is that?
Yeah. At the start of the pandemic, it was such a bad situation for everyone. We wanted to launch in March of this year. And that was just about the time when the pandemic was starting to bring the world down. In fact, I had a trip to China planned to meet our manufacturers and everything so that we could literally turn the key and start manufacturing as soon as we could. But it was more than anything else the uncertainty of the way of the world and what was going to happen in the future if we decided to launch. Because at the start of COVID-19, nobody knew what was going on. But as time progressed, we suddenly started realizing that the writing was on the wall of what the future would look like. And it was the fact that people are starting to work remote and people are working from home. So we came up with the perfect device, which actually helps people be more productive, especially away from their desk. And I think the aha moment was literally I set up our office with my wife who sits next to me, and I realized that we were constantly interrupting each other because we either talked about work stuff or talked about home stuff. And quite often it was either, hey, you're interrupting me, I'm losing my flow. Or I interrupted her and then got a rude awakening when she said, hey, I'm working, leave me alone. And then I suddenly took out my TimeChi and put one for her and said hey, hang on a second. Why don't we start using this? It's perfect for exactly this situation. And then we realized this is almost the perfect tool for the post-COVID world. So we decided, there's never a perfect time to launch a company. And, we might actually be onto something that helps a lot of people, especially when they feel like they're not being productive at home. And we decided, hey, now's the best time as any, let's launch.
That's great. That's great. And can you just talk a little bit more about your relationships with your manufacturers in China? We have a few questions here that we're going to jump afterwards, but particularly speaking right now, especially during these last 4, 5, 6 months, how was your relationship with the manufacturers back in China?
The manufacturers are back on and they're producing things faster than ever. It's like the pandemic never hit. At the start when it was Chinese New Year in late January, and then in February they kind of extended the break to try and keep everyone at home so that they weren't spreading around coronavirus. But at the moment, things are back to normal in China, and our manufacturers are now, after kind of realizing, hey, we've taken more time off than we really wanted to, we've got to make up for it. And they become a little bit more hungry to kind of get new business and get these things running out the door. And that's one of the nice things that, we have our manufacturers who are coming back to us and saying, hey, when can we start manufacturing? When can we start doing this? How many do you need? That, they're very, very enthusiastic to help us. And I think that's probably one of the greatest things about the fact that we met all of our manufacturing partners. We shortlisted and vetted them all in December of last year. So we were almost ready to start the whole process until the pandemic started. But now we've built up the relationships with them, met face to face, which if anybody is starting a hardware company, it's still very strongly in the Chinese culture that you meet your manufacturers because they like putting a face to the name and stuff. You totally can do it completely remote if you wanted to, but you build up a much stronger relationship when you actually meet them.
That's great. Thanks for sharing. I just have one more question for you, Sean, and then we're going to jump into Q&As. We have a few Q&As coming through, but please, everyone, feel free to put your questions through. So, Sean, You've been a massive community builder and you've crowdsourced, which makes total sense. But why did you choose Indiegogo over Kickstarter?
Ah, that's always a big question. Yeah, so one of the things that we kind of did almost a year ago when we were in San Francisco is I met up with the people from Indiegogo and met up with the people from Kickstarter. And it was just a little bit more kind of security around the fact that Indiegogo said to us, hey, when you reach this goal, we're going to do an email blast for you. When you reach this goal, you do this, when you do that. And it just seemed a little bit more solid. And there was actually quite a few businesses that have been built after the Indiegogo that have been quite successful. But Kickstarter kind of like still felt a little bit more like the Wild West. Like, there's no promises if you're going to be a staff pick, nothing around that. It did have a bigger community, but like on the back end, it kind of meant that we still had to use other tools like BackerKit and things like that to kind of help manage all of our pledges. And every time you have one of those services, it kind of adds more commissions taken away for all these services. Like I think BackerKit was like 3% of all of your gross sales. And I was just kind of scratching my head going like, why am I giving you like 3% of all of our sales simply because, you're creating type form questionnaires to get information from our backers. So we decided to go with Indiegogo, which has a little bit less organic reach than Kickstarter. I think it's about like 2/3 the reach of Kickstarter. So we kind of lose out on that side of things. But we felt like, the relationship that we built with Indiegogo was quite strong and wanted to go through them.
Thanks for sharing, Sean. That's great. That's pretty much it for a fireside chat. And I have a few questions here for you. So maybe let's just jump on it. I have a question from Paul and question for Sean. How did you find a manufacturing partner and how many samples did they make?
Yeah, the manufacturing partners. So we kind of had a couple of different where we've got different people from different parts. So our plastics manufacturer, we actually met through a recommendation through a friend of ours here in Australia who ran a Indiegogo and Kickstarter campaign for a folding laptop stand, something called the Tiny Tower. I highly suggest you have a look at that one if you're looking for a laptop stand, because I've got so many of them around because they're a great product. And we met with them because he introduced us and they did just such a good job for him. But the electronics manufacturer and the people who are doing all the testing and stuff, we met through just community networks because they were actually part of the Sydney startup community. And I knew one of the people who was Startup Grind there, and they kind of connected us, and they were just very on top of things, very good service, and they provided everything that we needed and kind of did it that way. We did find a few different suppliers through sourcing tools like Alibaba and global sourcing and things like that, and had some absolute successes. There's some great companies that came from there, but we also had quite a few misses where they just did an absolutely terrible job at what we were asking them to do. But we asked them for a few samples. Quite typically, you can get 10 samples of something made up before you kind of get on top of things. You just pay for them to make the sample and it comes back. And then you just shortlist and find out which ones work best, work well with you, and take it from there.
That's what we definitely need a session on how to find manufacturers after that. It's a topic.
But there's also one big thing about finding people on Alibaba and all of those sourcing websites. Quite often you're actually chatting to a middleman between a factory and the product and and yourself. So there's a person who's in between you and the actual people who make it. So it's part of, before you go into the mass manufacturing, before you put in an order for 1,000 units, it's always good to kind of do the visit and make sure that you're actually talking to the people you think you're talking to.
Great tip, thanks for sharing. I have another question from Doruk. Can you comment on the general experience you've had with crowdfunding so far?
Yeah, It's interesting. You have to do a lot of work. I think one of the biggest misconceptions of crowdfunding, especially through Kickstarter and Indiegogo, is you can put up a good product and then everybody will come and find it. But that's a total lie. We did a lot of pre-campaigning before we even went on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. When we were doing our pre-campaign, we were doing a wait list, and we got 12,000 people on our wait list before we even went there. And you're normally looking only about like 2.5% conversions on a wait list to actual buyers, because it's just the way things do. Sometimes people put their names down on a wait list just because they're interested, but are very unlikely to buy. And we put a fair amount of money behind marketing and advertising and making sure we do things around there. Like we partnered up with a marketing agency in the United States who've been absolutely fantastic. So if anybody wants a recommendation, just feel free to send me an email at sean@timechi.com, and I'm happy to do it because they've just been fantastic. But the idea is that you need to spend at least 10 to 15% of what your final outcome is just on paid advertising. So don't ever think that it's just a place you can put up your project and people will come to. It's definitely not that. You have to put in the work. It's a marketing tool and nothing more than that.
That clarifies a lot of stuff, John. Thank you so much for that.
We for people who's watching and maybe remember our Kickstarter campaign, we were unsuccessful at meeting our goal. And the lesson learned is that it's quite hard to do a service Kickstarter. You have to do a product, because if you do a service, there's a limitation in terms of who can buy your service, right? So people in Sydney are not going to come to a makerspace in Melbourne. So we learned this the hard way. It sounds really trivial right now, but but we thought that could be the way to go for a makerspace.
And it's also kind of choosing the right platform to launch from, because if you go Kickstarter and Indiegogo, they work best if you're selling a product that's going to be international from day one, just because the market is so huge there, and their audience is like, we have more than half of our customers are in the United States, half of our backers are in the United States. I think our breakdown goes the USA, Australia, UK, and either Germany or Canada, one of the two. It's like, I can't remember which one comes first, but those are our kind of top 5 countries. And it means if we were trying to do something solely for Australia, then we would have lost out a lot of things on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for clarifying that misconception, because myself not so long ago I had the impression that Kickstarter or Indiegogo were pretty much an organic channel, which is definitely not the case.
No,
you got to put on a lot of money there.
I think only 14% of our sales actually came through Indiegogo's organic channels. So that's just an FYI for anyone who wants to do this. But I'm happy to talk maybe another time about the whole crowdfunding thing, because I'm certainly no expert at it, but I can tell you my insights of it, and there's a lot to it. Especially things like when you launch, you need to try and make your goal within the first 24 hours. Or else you're not going to show up on any lists, and you're going to lose out on a lot of organic traffic there, and other things like that.
Yeah, you need momentum for sure.
Absolutely.
It's like launching any new products, right? People underestimate how long it takes. Even big companies can have a flop. Think about this.
Yeah. And big companies often have flops, but the difference is that we don't have the money to fall back on when we do.
Yeah.
Cool. I have one last question from Jeremiah for you, Sean. I'd love to hear this story of how you got your company started, how you found people to work with who had the same goals as you, and how you managed to stay on task with presumably no income.
Yes, this is I can go to doing the light switch. I was had somebody who was a friend and a person that I was working with in a company when I was a product manager, and I thought it was like, hey, why don't we work together, because we kind of balance ourselves out. I'm very pro this and he's very overly cautious, but it wasn't the right fit. and we ended up having a founder breakup, and kind of like, you know, that company dissolved because we don't really even talk to each other anymore. So that was kind of like, you know, not a great situation for anyone. But what I did after that one was when I restarted and started TimeChi, I started just doing it by myself a little bit. And then I was saying, hey, I need a couple of people on board. And I was just, at the time, kind of hiring an engineer, somebody who was to help me out, like, you know, doing the technical side of things. And I was just asking around. You know, the power of networks 100% helped, because it managed to kind of open up the net so that I could find more people and have chats to more people. And one of my friends actually said, like, his partner was just getting out of university, and looking for a job. And I just brought him on as a co-founder at the start. I brought him on as an engineer at the start to help me out with. And then kind of like we realized that we had the same vision, kind of we're going in the same direction, and wanted to, I asked him to become a co-founder after working together for about 3 months. But the main thing is, if you want to try and find out how to survive when you're doing a startup, I did a lot of side jobs, a lot of odd jobs. I had a previous small business that was quite successful, and I had a fair amount of savings. The other thing is that, like, you know, when you're starting off, grants are one of the most fantastic things that you can get, because it's money from the government to kind of like help you get started. But you just have to learn to kind of like change your whole lifestyle and try and find out how you can make small amounts of extra money and still manage to support yourself, and because your lifestyle is definitely going to change when you don't have any income.
Yeah.
No,
Thanks for sharing.
that's a great answer. I think for anyone who's any founder would probably tell a similar story. I feel like is a big commitment.
Yes, it changes your whole view and things. But like, you know,
Yeah.
it's, I guess I had a long chat with somebody a little while ago about kind of the idea of how to be a hungry founder. And it's like, when you suddenly realize that you're hungry because you need to earn money to be able to put food on the table, or else you're going to starve, it kind of changes your way of looking at things, and it kind of gives you that kind of drive or hustle, or like, you know, the rocket ship on your back, to kind of like make sure that you try harder and you're not just being lazy. Because when you're trying to make money so that you can survive, it changes the whole pace of things, because you become a lot kind of like more gun-ho, and it's like, this has to be a success, and like, you know, how can I make sure, how can I, like, you know, work towards it.
Yeah, I agree 100%, man.
So Jay has a comment. Well, I think we can address this unique selling point. Jay maybe missed out some earlier conversation, but Jean, 30-second pitch. Let's convert this non-believer.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah,
Not sure if you've managed to read the question, but he's really just asking, how does your physical product differ from an exercise in digital discipline on a phone?
yeah. The thing is that what our unique selling point is, it creates good habits, and it creates good habits for people around you as well. So an app on your phone gets lost, but an app on your phone actually puts you in front of all of your digital distractions anyway. So it means you're literally putting the drug in front of the addict. But more than anything else, is the best productivity methods are the ones that you use. And the nice thing about TimeChi is it's always ready, it's always sitting in front of you, and you kind of create that nice dopamine hit when you actually press it, because it signifies the start of it's almost like a routine, kind of like a mantra, to say, hey, now I'm going to be on a focus period, and I'm going to start work, and this is what I'm going to do. It's kind of one of the things that I was having a chat to a lot of people when we were talking about working from home. And the problem is, like, lots of people get really depressed working from home, because home life and work life kind of tend to merge together, because you're missing out the routine that you do, where it's like you go to work, and your commute to work is normally the way that you get your brain into the right mode, that, hey, I'm starting my work day. And when you go home, it's the way to say, hey, I'm ending my work day. So what we're doing is we're creating and focusing that into a smaller period so that when you actually press and say, hey, this is my focus period, you're creating that mantra and that space and that thought in your head that now is the time to work and now is the time to focus. And in 25 minutes, I'm going to get a break. And then you kind of get that feeling of like a small success where you break down large projects into small bite-sized pieces. And it just helps you be so much more productive and so much, and makes you feel so much better as you're trying to get through the day rather than trying to, like, you know, push a rock up a hill. You're just taking it step by step.
Yeah, and also, Sean, I think it also protects you from distraction, because I think a lot of times people don't know whether you are in a deep focus mode or not. I think this is actually a critical point. Can you just bring out your device again so people can see it?
Yeah, it's actually saying we're overtime at the moment. So
yeah.
So, like, you know, now it's onto the break. And the nice thing is that because I'm on a break, it's a green light. Seems like traffic lights work very well to try and tell people what you're doing. But we found out that, you know, headphones on rarely works anymore, because when you wear headphones, you might wear them for 5 minutes or 5 hours. Nobody knows. And if you do that, then they think, hey, if I'm going to interrupt you at any point in time, I might as well interrupt you now. And then you break that. Or they work too well. And the fact is that, you know, somebody with headphones on will never be approached. And then it's like, hey, hang on, we kind of got to collaborate. We got to communicate. And, you know, somebody else, like, you know, feels that pain point because they're, like, you know, not taking breaks. So it's the idea that you kind of create a visual way for everybody to know I'm working, I'm on a break, when you can contact me, and, like, you know, when I'm going to be done on a focus period. But also when it comes to timing and stuff like that, it actually counts down that way so that it kind of gives you a little bit more proportionality with time. So you feel like, hey, I've got to kind of I'm about halfway through my break, so I've either got to speed up or slow down, and it kind of helps you pace yourself.
Okay. Thank you so much, Sean. I think we answered most of the questions. If there's more questions, please feel free to put in there. But we're also gonna jump to Slack channel after this, and we can stay engaged.
But, you know, if anybody wants to have a chat, either jump onto Ozhard. I think if you go to ozhard.com, ozhard.com, it will still bring you to the right place. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to ping me on at sean@timechi.com. And if anybody is looking for a TimeChi, please help support us. Help support an Aussie company that's trying to make a new productivity device that'll help the world.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, Leon, please come on board. We have a second segment that's also quite exciting. Bernardo and Sean, do you want to stay on, or do you want to pause? I
might just cut my camera. I think that's better. Yeah, I'll join back after that.
Okay. All right. Second segment is gonna be another chat. So Leon, can you just maybe introduce yourself again? I guess the first question for you is what was it like before coronavirus? Can you just talk about your exhibition business and how you got started? Take us back to way back in terms of.
No problem. So I'm just going to share my websites there. I don't have small products that I can share like Sean. Great talk too, by the way, Sean, and that's an awesome product. I think I'm going to definitely have to grab one of those. So my name's Leon Mortimer. I'm the founder and managing director of Event 720 primarily. So Event 720 is a custom exhibition stand building company. So I founded that business in 2015. And so based in Melbourne, started from scratch. And so essentially we primarily work at large exhibitions and trade shows at Melbourne Convention Centre, International Convention Centre in Sydney, and the large venues in the other capital cities around Australia. So I guess I could echo, I was nodding along furiously to a lot of the things Sean was saying about starting the business. Mirrored my experiences very closely, but I started that business in September 2015, and then I think it took about 7 or 8 months to get our first sale in April 2016, and then since then we've really worked hard and enjoyed really consistent growth, I guess. We've kind of grew at about 300% for the first year, and then since then it's been pretty consistent, 70 to 90% growth every year. And along the way, we've accumulated quite a good collection of clients from all across Australia. We do work for international governments, multinationals, to small businesses, and everything in between.
Yeah, I remember visiting your workshop. You at the time you just had a new CNC delivered.
That's right. Yeah, so that was in our first factory, which was at the Western base.
Yes.
In Melbourne, which is it was a great little incubator that we were able to take advantage of, and that was an awesome stepping stone for us to get into high quality commercial space, to have the a really functioning workshop that we could have locally, like close to the city, at a really reasonable price. And I guess that business has really always been about not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but identifying ways to do things better, smarter, and more efficiently.
Yes.
And then really just executing that point. So the whole idea essentially is, in exhibitions, there's a lot of there's a big focus it's an expensive thing to do. So a lot of other companies will purchase stock and items to build stands with. So they'll end up being, by nature, they end up being really quite generic shaped items and pieces of walling and furniture, and then reusing them as much as possible to get a good return on them. Whilst it definitely makes a lot of business sense to do that, and it's a really good way to enjoy good margins. You effectively end up building a lot of white boxes for everything. Everything looks the same, and it's quite boring. Yeah. So we, very early on, we purchased a 3 metre by 1.5 metre flatbed CNC machine,
right?
And we do all our own CAD designs for everything. And so we've gone down a model where we can do full custom designs and constructions, I guess, in a way that is actually affordable. So it's not like you're trying to get the top 10% of people who've got a budget to afford it. We've been able to bring the cost of doing really customized products down to a level where we can almost do it for not everyone, but maybe we've increased that portion of the market who can afford it from 10% to 50%. So, and that strategy's been really successful.
Great. And I guess when coronavirus started to emerge, could you just talk us through about your kind of emotional, I guess, struggle or turmoil, and how did you find that experience? Because I run a makerspace, and it was like the sky was falling down. It was quite, I think depends on each person's personal personality. I think people deal with issues differently, but I definitely felt it was quite challenging. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So in February this year, we were actually completing a roadshow across Australia and New Zealand for MYOB accounting software. So that was actually the biggest project that we'd ever done. Uh-huh. And I can remember we're in New Zealand near the end of the roadshow, and it was quite complex. It was it was going really well, and we were just having dinner after doing an install one night, and I remember just having a conversation with my colleagues over there, and we're like, I wonder what's going to happen with this. Things aren't sounding very good in China at the moment. And then fast forward 3 weeks later, and obviously the mass gathering bans came in Australia in mid-March, and essentially when that happened, literally all our future work was postponed or cancelled. I think we had about $250,000 of completed projects that were due to get loaded onto trucks to go interstate the next day. So it was a really busy period for us. And thankfully, the call got made on a Friday and not the Monday, because we would have had a lot of freight going around the country that we had to call back. But I would echo how you described it. It did feel like the sky was falling in.
Yeah.
We were on track to kind of grow our revenue by about 80% this year, the last financial year. And start of February, we'd already done more turnover than the year before. So we were very much geared into growth. And there's a lot of overheads and expenditure that comes along with that. So to have it's like nothing I could have ever even imagined experiencing, really. Just everything, complete revenue and everything just completely stopped instantly.
Yeah, it just kind of went over the cliff. Like I think especially those kind of large events industry was probably the first industry to be hit. Like also like sports, right? People were not having large sporting events or music concerts, so event industry got hit really early. And I guess from that point, if you look at the the 7 stages some anger and some denial. It's like, oh, why is it happening to me? Because okay, so and how did this new idea came about in terms of toys? Was it something that you were doing already? That was something. How did the idea come about?
Yeah, so I guess it wasn't something we were doing already on a commercial level or anything like that. I really need to thank my wife for she's really the impetus and the big push behind this idea. She's really into wooden and open-ended toys in our house. We've got 2 small children, a 4-year-old and a 1-year-old. Yeah. And so over the last couple of years, we've kind of slowly migrated out all the cheap plastic toys that the kids get given at Christmas, and we've just been buying nice, good quality wooden toys. And I've really observed there's just an enormous supply and demand imbalance in that market. Wooden toys have been becoming quite a lot more popular, both from people getting more into open-ended toys, but also from an eco point of view, things like that. Whilst at the same time, there's no manufacturers really in Australia, and it's kind of been happening all over the world. So there's just massive supply issues, and people go on waiting lists for products, and there's a restock every few months, and people just can't get what they want. So I'd been jokingly talking about it for quite a while because a lot of the toys there'd be things that Chloe, my wife, would want to purchase, but it's impossible to actually get it. So I'd go into work on the weekends and make a copy of it, on the weekends. Here you go, you can't buy it, but here you go, I can make one. And then it kind of, after a few of these, I was like, oh, we should do this as a second business one day. And then obviously Event 720 was going really well. So the idea of starting a second business when you've already got one growing at 80% is you push it to the back very quickly. So it was probably, if I'm being honest, I don't think it probably took me 6 weeks to really get over that sudden impact of the market disappearing for events. I was a bit of a mess for 6 weeks, and the 7 stages that you were talking about there, I definitely went through all of those. And I was and to the point where I'm a bit of a fastidious planner, and I thought I had every single scenario mapped out about the recovery and things like that. And I think I've redone that about 6 times, and where we are right now is my worst case scenario, and all of those is
second wave. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So it took about 6 weeks before we're like, well, this is going to take a little bit longer than we think. We've got a lot of overheads, so we need to come up with a plan B.
Right.
Because we're not going to write it out. Yeah.
And I think this speaks to your strength, right? Like you obviously you have skills and you have other things that you can do, and never underestimate sometimes the side hustle, the side project that one day may become your main business. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs probably do that, right? Like you're working full time for, say, a company, and then you have some other passion that you want to pursue, or interests. I just call it interests, right? It's nothing too serious, and you develop it over time. You never had the intention of commercializing it, but eventually, more people want it. Then you say, okay, well, I might have something there, right? And then you start talking to other people, and their friends also want it. So I think that's a natural way to go about starting a new business or a new product.
Definitely, actually. I haven't thought of it like that, but it's in essence, it's exactly the same process that I went through before I started the first business. I guess it's this. Yeah, but I guess because you're already working in a business, I didn't think of it like that. But definitely, that's yeah.
Yeah, we see people in our community in the makerspace. Sometimes that's what they do. They may have a kind of income source as a main income source as kind of what they do for work, and then they have some other passion that they do on the side, and eventually that might grow into something bigger, and they may decide to jump into the pool, right, and do it full time. So for wooden toys, could you talk a little bit more about the manufacturing side? Is it quite different? I mean, I'm assuming that it's solid timber, right?
Yeah, so probably 50-50 actually. So yeah, it is quite different. So in exhibitions, probably 90% of the material we use is MDF, really. So obviously wooden toys for children, no MDF in sight. It's all we do a lot of plywood, building platforms and climbing structures and things like that. We've got a couple of, I guess our main product that we really think is our signature product is just building blocks. We're not reinventing the wheel. They're really nice hardwood building blocks, but it's something that no one really makes on scale in Australia. There's a really popular company, a German company called Grimm's, that make a really nice big set that is just impossible to buy. It's so popular. So we have one at home, and I have essentially what we've done is we've kind of identified a lot of existing products, and then it's almost exactly what we did with the events business. We haven't gone to copy them. We've looked at them at a base and said, okay, this is popular. What are the reasons why this is popular, and how can it be made better? And so that's basically the process. So where we can, we're improving the materials, the functionality, and just the top, little specs. Something like a block set, it's literally the improvement comes from having more larger blocks as opposed to smaller blocks, because kids can build bigger. Very simple, but a tiny little change completely changes the product.
And how do you go about marketing and getting into market?
Yeah, so I think I'm a little bit too close to the coalface at the moment, and we're only 6 weeks post-launch, so I think we're going to be a little bit down the track. I'm going to look back very proudly at this, but essentially this went from commit to idea to going to market with stock in 5 weeks.
Oh wow!
So this is
congrats.
There's no pressure like financial pressure. So it's a very interesting situation where we've got an overhead base that we've got to grow a business too, where obviously normally they'd grow together, but basically having an established company, we've also learnt a lot of the lessons. So we've been able to get all our branding done properly to start with. We've also, we've got a designer on staff as well. So a lot of these things have been a lot easier, but essentially we've just tried to do it as good as we can, as quickly as we can. So we've got our branding done. We already have an e-commerce platform with doing simple rentals through our exhibition business. So we're able to utilize, we're just trying to keep very much using the KISS principle, keep everything as simple as we can. So we've used the Shopify platform. We've come up with a small, I think we've started with like 10, 11 products, small product number line that we can build to a high quality, quickly and we can get materials easily. Really tried to keep it as simple as possible so that we can guarantee the consistency, profit margins, and everything like that. And it's whilst a big challenge that other businesses in this space have is they can't keep stock because it's coming from overseas, and especially at the moment, there's obviously enormous challenges with
logistics,
shipping interruption.
Freight,
So our big point of difference is having items in stock, in stock, ready to I guess it doesn't matter whether you've got one too many products or 10 too many products, as long as you've got, as long as you can fulfill your orders. So we've kind of got a base level of stock, and then we've kind of we're growing from there. Essentially, it's all getting marketed through social media. We're doing a wholesale and a retail model. So events business is purely B2B.
Yep.
So we've got 6 staff. All our staff are highly experienced in B2B. So B2C was quite scary for us to start with.
Yeah, but you learn, right?
So, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I guess the B2C channel, we're doing very organic through toy groups and I guess those areas on Facebook and Instagram where people are already collaborating and talking about it. We're in there talking and sharing and contributing to those. And then we're also going directly to retailers who are really, the uptake's been quite amazing, really. I think we've probably like 90% of retailers we've reached out to have agreed to stock the product. So
wow, that's great. And also, I think right now the consumers are more conscious on sustainability. So plastic, the issue with plastic in the ocean, plastic bags. And obviously, the problem is actually exacerbated by the pandemic because it's of single-use plastic. And I think that's number one. I see that's going for the wooden toy. Number two, made in Australia. I think people now care about that. So I think you can capitalize on that and really grow. And you're very authentic, and we obviously want you to do really well as a whole community. So when I saw the I think I saw a newsletter from Western Base. Yeah.
Yep.
And I obviously know Mark pretty well. So yeah, thank you for being just having this chat with us. And I think based on some of the questions, I'm just gonna start asking some questions from the chat. How did you achieve initial entry to market with Event 720, and also combining the experience with custom design public stages with children toys? Sounds like you build amazing parks, playgrounds. So that's two questions. How did you get into the event exhibition industry?
So my background is in corporate events. So I guess I studied event management at university, worked as a corporate event planner. I found my way into an exhibition company as an account manager, and that was my first taste of working in the exhibition industry. And after doing that for a while, I saw a lot of opportunities to do some things better, and then I decided to go out on my own from there. Sorry, what?
Second question is, sounds like you had a skill set to build parks and playgrounds.
Well, I have actually built the first lockdown in that 6 weeks where I was wallowing in my own self-pity. I built a pretty big adventure playground for the kids in the backyard, actually.
Spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. No, I think this is a great story, and thank you again for coming on and being so open and to share your journey, and I'm so happy to hear that, because I didn't know prior to this chat that whether the new toys has been taken off, but 6 weeks, man, that's quite impressive. That's quite difficult to do.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's no, look, it's been a lot of hard work, but there's it's funny actually. I thought I was motivated when I started the first business, and it obviously takes a lot of work, but it's a very different type of motivation, I guess. And we've obviously we're in a good place because we've got a team of people who can work on it. Like, this is by no means is this I've started the business in 6 weeks. Our team has, and it's
teamwork.
I mean, exactly, yeah. And I mean, the reality is, and like, I'm a very honest and transparent person with all our team, but the reality is, if we don't get this business going in a very short amount of time, the other one's going to, exactly, we're going to lose everything. So that's the situation. So when faced with that, there's only one thing you can do, isn't there?
You go forward. Yeah, no, I think that we should open it up to Bernardo. Perhaps come back and we can have a Q&A. because I'm conscious we're going 7 minutes over 7.
Yeah.
So this is great. I really thank you, Leon, for sharing, and I really enjoyed the conversation, and I think this is a good, almost like a documentary of your journey. I hope that in the future you look back and say, oh wow, like that's where I was, and we'll continue to follow your progress, and I think wooden toys is something that I think everybody can get behind, right?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, Leon. I think if there's one word that defines both of your journeys, Leon and Sean, it's probably starvation, right? Impressive what you guys achieved based on that.
Yeah, I was reading a talk, and it's basically say the key drivers for innovation, right, is starvation, pressure, and new perspective.
Yeah.
So
well, COVID-19's done that for all of us, right? All three of them.
Yeah. And perspective can sometimes come from the outside, right?
Yeah.
So again, if you're listening, if you have any more questions, I believe I have answered the main ones for Leon. I think Jay has a question about events to do with augmented reality. Is that I'm not 100% sure, but I'll try to reframe it. I think the questions around, again, this is for the whole pan, for both Sean and Leon. In terms of physical distancing, do you see opportunities to use like augmented reality coupled with like video conferencing? Actually, I'm not exactly sure. Jay, help me out here a little bit, because I think you're talking about physical events, in-person events, or you're talking about virtual events like this?
I think you can ask for the mic, Jay. That works.
Yeah. Jay, do you want to request the mic, and you can actually ask a question from your audio, mobile or your screen.
Here we go.
Hi, Jay, can you hear us?
Yeah, we gave you the mic. Not sure if it worked. Maybe just use the chat.
I can answer that if you like. Just speaking, the impact that I think it might have on the event space. It's funny. It's the most common question I get asked at the moment. There'll be definitely the virtual events that's happening at the moment that will stay. I can see. I was talking to another supplier just yesterday actually about this, and he's an AV technician, so front of house doing conferences and doing all the audio there. To basically they're sitting in a room doing virtual coordination of conferences, and so I think that there's a big component of conferences that'll definitely stay online. I think one of the big things that's going to happen out of all the shutdowns and the physical distancing that everyone's being forced to do is, I don't know, I'm a bit of an extrovert anyway, but I am just starved of human attention. I don't want to, there's no way on earth I'm signing up to be like this forever. I want to get out and be with people as quickly as I humanly can. And I think a lot of other people are going to be the same. So,
and there's actually a lot of research behind people feel more fatigued doing video conferences and Zoom meetings. Like, there's actually, they termed a phrase Zoom burnout because of all the video conferences that people do. Because it's like oddly enough, it's almost the opposite of what you'd expect. Like, people are feeling more tired doing a video conference than they would be sitting right in front of each other. But I think it's the fact that you kind of have to overthink everything because you're trying to do read people's expressions and work much harder to try and understand people if it's not coming through clearly. And then dealing with people being on mute and silly things like that. There's always this funny thing that, have you noticed, like at the end of every video conference, people are like, bye, and things like that. It's because everybody has to kind of overact when they're on video conferences to real life. So, yeah, I think Jay was mentioning something about like, AR to kind of like, be a replacement space. I can't talk too much about AR, but definitely been playing around with VR lately. And as much fun as it is, doesn't replace kind of like, the whole tactile sensation. And I've got a couple of friends who are considering doing like, virtual workspaces in VR. And I just think that after a little while, it might start hurting your eyes. And, those VR headsets are still quite heavy. So having a heavy thing on your face for most of the day kind of seems like it's going that direction, but maybe just not yet.
Yeah, and also communication, a high percentage is actually coming from non-verbal.
Absolutely.
Your facial expression, your tone of voice, your hand gestures. Are you smelling good, right? I'm serious. Like, that's why people wear perfume. Right?
Yes, and like, I guess the other thing is people don't take enough showers when they're working from home, right? For all you know, I could be like, t-shirt, and this is about as much clothes as I have.
Okay. Well, as much as I enjoyed the conversation, I think we probably should wrap it up. Bernardo, any final thoughts around for our two wonderful guest speakers?
Thank you so much, man. It's a massive pleasure to meet both of you. I've heard from both of you through Hans and other people before, and it's awesome to have you here. And thank you so much, everyone who joined. I've dropped a link to our Discord channel here in the chat. Please do join. Our Discord channel is it's pretty much a chat-based application like Slack or even WhatsApp, you call it, but it's divided in sections. And each section is around one specific topic or subject. And it's a free and open chat. Anyone can join. It's invitation only, though. You have to send the link to other person. So please join. Let's keep this conversation going. And we're talking things, anything. We're talking about 3D printing, laser cutting, entrepreneurship, CAD design, and anything. So please just join. Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, and also for people who are watching this, we for show and tell we do it first Friday. So it's really easy to remember. You don't have to remember the dates. First Friday of each month, we do a show and tell. And this
thanks for bringing this option. Oh, Hans,
Sorry.
And
so
remember, Friday is the day at the end of the week. Like, I'm sure lots of people forget what day of the week it is now.
And
so our next edition is the 4th of September for you who are not really tracking which day of the week it is anymore.
And anybody can, if you want to present, you want to be on this forum, please reach out to me or Bernardo. We are open forum, so we're not trying to today we have really high caliber speakers, but most of the time people can just show up and give a talk. We don't have this kind of rigid schedule, but obviously for virtual events it's harder to do it to do it like that.
Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Oh.
I'm gonna over.
So say bye now.
Yeah, we'll be on Discord for a little bit.
Yeah.
See.
Thanks, man.
It happens.
Thank you so much, everyone. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
So we're gonna continue this conversation on Discord. I might just drop the link here once more, and feel free to go off. We have kind of format every month, but feel free to just making things, working on CAD, anything you want. So just let me know. We're open to suggestions.
Yep, absolutely.
Users first, right?
Yeah,
Sean?
we'll put a Discord link both on LinkedIn and also here, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks, Alex.